welcome back to Drunk Storytime with Quefish. Still on the sparkling butt and Chambord, which I'll link if anyone gives a shit. I've also started introducing some food. I've just got these little itty bitty little mozzarella cheese pearls because they're magical. And what goes better with wine than cheese? I also put them in my macaroni and cheese to have like these little cheesy pockets. Nobody cares. So, moving on to somebody that I do read quite a bit. Chamyl, with Not That Bad When You Get Used to It. We are doing chapter 21. Oops, just one second. I clicked badly. Chapter 21. Alternative uses for a snake. I'm not entirely sure. I can think of any alternative uses. Shit! Sorry. I spilled my drink. And that's called alcohol abuse. It actually wasn't. It was the water that I have here just in case my mouth gets dry, but I still spilled a drink. So, Chamyl, Not That Bad When You Get Used to It. Chapter 21, Alternative Uses for a Snake. The prompt is travel. Fair warning, adult content. That Crowley is a snake here and they still have sex. So, you know. To explain how Crowley ended up in his snake form, wrapped around Aziraphale's torso, his tail between the angel's butt cheeks and his forked tongue flickering on the head of his lover's cock in the big shower of a luxury hotel on the southern coast of France, we need to take it back a little. To about 10 minutes ago. Oh, is that all? To about 10 minutes ago, in fact, when Aziraphale called from the bathroom, shouting above the noise of the shower running. "Crowley," he'd said. "Crowley, I'm quite afraid I forgot to pack my sponge." Crowley, who could easily detect the little mischievous note in the angel's voice, had hurried to the bathroom, unzipping his dress along the way and letting it fall to the floor with dramatic flair that he quite liked. He'd been more than a little excited to get some fancy hotel sex. You know what? It is absolutely a thing, fancy hotel sex. But Aziraphale had looked at him through the transparent shower wall, elegantly speckled with drops, and frowned. "Oh, the angel had begun, while Crowley stepped out of his underwear, his eyes glued to Aziraphale's Renaissance painting-like curves. "I rather thought it would have been nice for you to be a literal serpent this time." Crowley had carefully considered this for all of 3 seconds. "Here's the thing," the angel would explain to you, if you ask. And if he felt like explaining, I'm assuming. "Here's the thing," the demon would explain to you if you asked. "If you're ever put in the position of having to wait 6,000 years to get laid, you'll discover yourself willing to try most things. And here is another aspect to consider," Aziraphale would politely add. 6,000 years is a very long time for one's imagination to flourish. All very good points. which partly explains why Crowley, with barely a sigh, had turned into a big black snake and slithered into the shower. I can do a little role play, he thought, wrapping himself around Aziraphale's ankle and beginning to climb his leg like an apple tree. You're not actually cleaning anything, Crowley, Aziraphale had soon protested. Oh, this wasn't supposed to be sexy time. Just give me a good scrubbing. Rather thought that was the point, Crowley had hissed back, bumping his snout into the back of Aziraphale's knee. That wasn't the point at all, Aziraphale had replied, sounding much more indignant than Crowley thought he had any right to sound. Do it properly, please. Now, it goes without saying that Crowley had never, in his long existence, quite been told how to turn himself into a human. Into a snake sponge. So he'd done what seemed more logical to do, wrapping his coils tightly around Aziraphale's entire leg and moving up and down like a disproportionately big spring. Being compressed and released again in rapid succession. All right, this takes the cake for the dumbest thing we've ever done, Crowley said, mostly to himself. You are free to go if this is not to your liking, Aziraphale had replied. But Crowley had taken a look at the angel's rapidly swelling cock, nipped his buttock, making him gasp, and shrugged, in whichever way a snake coiled around an angel's leg could shrug. No, I didn't say that. I've done much weirder things for much less reward. It's a fantastic sentence. And so, he'd kept going. No matter how strange it was, he'd cleaned Aziraphale's 4 limbs, and then his torso, and he was up around his neck when Aziraphale had gasped, "Oh, love, please, now." And Crowley had known exactly what to do. Which brings us here, to a situation that would have any normal person call the police. Because it looks like a snake is being abused. Actually, could you hold on a moment, please? It sort of looks like the snake is very much into it now that I look closely. Oh, my dear, Aziraphale murmurs, holding himself up with one hand against the wet wall. Would you mind if I washed my hair while you... By all means, Crowley replies, having evidently decided that they might as well go down this rabbit hole as deep as they can possibly go. A few things happen in rapid succession. Aziraphale, with shaky hands, gets a bottle of shampoo and applies some to his curls. The shampoo drips down his body. No! And right into Crowley's eyes, making him hiss and involuntarily jerk around and inside his lover's body. Aziraphale yelps and hits the shower mixer with his elbow, turning the shower scorching hot in a matter of seconds. It is, after all, a luxury hotel. They both scream. Much later, once they've miracled away a few first-degree burns and a sore ass, but get to keep their wounded prides forever, Crowley passes Aziraphale a glass of wine and declares, "Next time, tear-free shampoo." Next time, Aziraphale, the angel raises both eyebrows in surprise and then smiles. Tear for you, shampoo. Yes, brilliant, absolutely. Oh my god. Oh god. Author notes that they wanted to tag this human furniture, but then realized a sponge isn't really furniture, more of an accessory. Also, a snake demon isn't a human, neither in essence or in shape. By this logic, I should have tagged it snake accessory. You see my problem. Oh my god. Chamyl, you're hilarious. Oh boy. God. I need some more sparkling butt. And Chambord. Because that's what makes sparkling butt worth it. I stand by that statement. Chambord makes sparkling butt worth it. I don't know that I'm going to be able to finish that without the Chambord, which is now gone. So, moving on. Chapter 22 of, not that bad when you get used to it. Chapter 22, First Parade. The prompt is Pride. Crowley sauntered into the bookshop, feeling pretty damn proud of himself. When does he not really? It's hard to find an outfit for an event that calls for head-to-toe rainbows when your demonic wardrobe... It's getting late in the evening. It's hard to find an outfit for an event that calls for head-to-toe rainbows when your demonic wardrobe ranges from black as a dark and stormy night to slightly less charcoal than concrete on an atrociously hot summer day. But Crowley thought he had done a good job. He admired his reflection in the big bookshop windows for a moment. He was wearing the most aggressive pair of combat boots he'd been able to find. Black. A scandalously short pair of denim shorts, also black. And a complicated top, ripped in strategic spots and held together by a multitude of safety pins, still black, both the top and the pins. His aviator sunglasses had mirror lenses. Therefore, they'd reflect all the colors around him, and he decided that would be his generous contribution to the event's theme. Oh my god, that's funny. Even his usual half-up, half-down hairdo looked nicer on that sunny morning. It was 1995, and Crowley was ready to party. Aziraphale looked at him as if he'd gone insane. The pride, Aziraphale, Crowley said, circling the angel, who had on the same clothes he'd been wearing for the past few decades. Have you missed it? It's been all over the news. Thought you'd be dying to go. In truth, Crowley had briefly debated whether he belonged at all in such a parade, what with being a genderless infernal being, or more accurately, an infernal being who thought all as... More accurately, an infernal being who thought of all genders as his own. Then he decided that being desperately in love with an angel was as close to queer as a demon could ever hope to get. All right, that's fair. I just don't think... Aziraphale hesitated, swallowed, glanced up. I don't think my side would quite approve of that is. What? Crowley looked at him over the rim of his sunglasses. Don't tell me heaven looks down on love. Isn't that their entire deal? Between humans, at least, Crowley added bitterly in his own head. But civil disobedience, Crowley, Aziraphale pointed out. Protesting in the streets. Oh, it's more like a party than a... Crowley spotted Aziraphale's raised eyebrows and realized heaven would like dislike the idea of one of their angels going to a party even more than an angel joining a protest. Why don't you wear a disguise then? A disguise? Aziraphale said, and there it was. The sparkle, the little light that signaled to Crowley that if he played his cards right, if he just gave the angel enough excuses to justify his actions to headquarters, he'd eventually say yes. Oh, but they would still sense my presence, wouldn't they? Not necessarily, Crowley said quickly, desperately fanning the fire before it could die. We stand close enough, we'll cancel each other out. They won't sense me and they won't sense you either. Oh, that could actually work. Aziraphale smiled as he took a step away towards the bookshop's back room. Be back in a jiffy. Oh, God. The first time I managed to bring him to one of these things and we look like a straight couple, Crowley thought to himself as they made their way to Trafalgar Square. Aziraphale hadn't just worn a disguise, as Crowley thought he would. And he hadn't limited himself to wearing something a tad flashy as the demon had. Oh no, he'd gone the whole way and come out of the back room with a brand new pair of delightful, voluminous breasts, fuller hips, and a cascade of lovely white gold curls that went all the way down to his shoulders. And tragically, the same love for tartan. The demon hoped to himself they'd be welcome anyway, and kept walking. The parade itself was glorious, full of colors, music, costumes, flags, balloons, witty signs. Crowley loved every second of it, and he loved even more how Aziraphale seemed to be enjoying himself, giggling behind a delicate hand or outright laughing with joy as they danced through the street. And dance they did, terribly, clumsily, completely disregarding rhythm and shame. But they danced all the same, and they'd never felt so free in their entire existence. And then, just as Crowley reached up to adjust his hair, Aziraphale stopped and looked at him. Really looked at him. He shifted closer, stood up on the tips of his toes, and kissed him. Crowley stood frozen for a long time, his hands stuck in his hair before his brain managed to tell his body to move them. His fingers came to rest on the angel's shoulders, and when Aziraphale pulled away, he was beaming, not to mention literally glowing. For a moment, that is. Until he took a step back and they both realized that the angel's luscious curls had caught in Crowley's shirt, or more precisely, in the multitude of tiny safety pins he was wearing all over. Wait, don't, Crowley tried to say, but Aziraphale was panicking. Ow, ow, oh, that hurts, Crowley, ow. If you could just stop squirming for a second. No, don't raise your arm, you'll just... Their frantic bickering was interrupted when a big black shadow loomed over them, and they realized that while the rest of the parade had moved forward, they had remained in the same spot for several minutes. Now, a huge pink tank, manned by several protesters in camo pants, was about to run them over. They both screamed. A snap of fingers later, they were both safe and sound inside the bookshop. They looked at each other for a long moment before starting to laugh. Aziraphale wiped a tear from his eyes, and Crowley thought he'd never loved him more. "Not bad for a first-timer," he said, in place of what he'd actually wanted to say but couldn't. Aziraphale gave him one of those meaningful, bashful looks that he'd come to know so well. "Not bad at all," Crowley repeated. Oh my god, this is so funny. Ow! So, that was chapter 21 and 22 from Chamyl. Not that bad when you get used to it. Thank you for joining me.